Hey, welcome back to the first episode of the Sublime Spotify series. In the previous episode, we talked about settings. Actually, let me open it right here. This is where we left off. This is our commit. It's the forced commit, and we mainly added this tiny abstraction called the settings manager, which was not even specific to our plugin. It's a tiny little thingy, a tiny little abstraction that can be reused by basically any other plugin that is doing anything related to settings. And today we're going to implement a settings manager on the Spotify level. So this one was for Sublime, which was basically just a helper to not to deal with the files directly, but to deal on the level of key value. So it's a higher level of abstraction. And the next one that we're going to write is going to be for Spotify, so it's going to sit even higher, and it's going to make sure that we're not going to pass keys for our settings around as strings, right? So it's just going to take care of them. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, so today we're also going to be writing tests, and if you're new to testing, automatic tests are a way to make sure that our entire project works, and its goal or its value is in being automatic and thus faster. So the idea is that we're going to be able to press one button or enter one command or have another very, very easy way to start the test, and then in a matter of seconds or minutes we know if our entire project works. So we're obviously going to be writing Python tests, but since we're inside of Sublime, we need an extra plugin that would run the tests for us. And the plugin is right here. It's by Randy3K and it's called Unit Testing. It's open source, it's on GitHub, and it has a unit testing example, but we don't need that. We're just going to jump straight to it. So what the plugin wants us to do is it wants us to have a folder called tests under the main folder. It is configurable, but in our case it's not necessary to change. So over here we're going to have a file, and it has to start with test, and then we just name it. So we're going to test settings manager, which is not the Sublime settings manager, as I already mentioned. We're going to be testing the Spotify settings manager, the one that we don't even have yet. So let's call it settings manager, and obviously it's a Python file. All right, so now actually we need to install this extension, this plugin. I already have it installed, so for you would press Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P, and you would type unit testing, right? So I'm going to do the same with remove, so that you can see it's unit testing version 0.10.5 in this case by github.com/Randy3K unit testing. Okay, so I already have it installed. So since I already have it installed and I have a file under tests which starts with test something, I can already say Command-Shift-P and start. Test current project. Test current project. So it already did something. It says ran 0 tests in 0 seconds and everything was fine. So let's just for fun implement a teeny tiny test. So for that we need a class, and I'm not sure if there are any naming conventions, but I think there aren't any. Let's call it the test settings manager, and it needs to extend unit test dot test case, right? Which means that we need to bring in unit test. And then we write our tests. Our tests are functions, and I believe they need to start with test, maybe even underscore. Let's say test hello world. Okay. Right. So we just say self assert equals, and there are usually 2 parameters. There's the actual value, and there is the expected value, right? And the actual value is the first one, and the expected one is the second one. So let's just say 5, 5, 5. All right, now let's run it, and it says test hello world test settings manager dot test settings manager, which is this module name, this class, and it was okay. So if the actual hello was 4, and we do the same thing again, we see failed, and we see exactly which one failed test hello world, and we see assertion error 4 was not equal to 5. It's a fast way to know if our project works. So assuming we have a lot of them, it's a very good way to fastly know that our project is actually doing what it's supposed to do. All right, so today we're going to implement a settings manager for Spotify. So first we're going to create a folder here under source called Spotify, right? And usually we would put a file here called settings manager, and then we would bring it in our tests, and then we would test it. But the thing is that, remember, if the files that we're working with are not in the main directory, then we will be forced to restart restart Sublime all the time. So while we develop it, we're going to create it in the main folder, right? So we're gonna leave the Spotify folder as is right now, but we're going to create the settings manager in the main folder. Okay, so it's here. And actually, let's put it down. Where is it? There we go. Settings manager. Okay, so over here, our settings manager is going to, our settings file in general, it will have 5 keys in total, and today we're going to implement only 2 of them. The first one is the polling interval. Remember, our plugin is basically a loop that every once in a while, which is the interval, once in a while. By default, it's going to be, let's say, 5 seconds. It will ask the REST API, hey, what's the current track? And then after 5 seconds, what's the current track? And so on and so on and so on. So the user will be able to change that value. And we're also going to validate that value and make sure that it's somewhere between, I don't know, 5 and 15, which is a bit arbitrary, but, you know, whatever. Yes, and the second value will be the enabled flag, if the plugin is enabled or not. So the user will be able to go into the file and change the Boolean flag to false, and then the plugin will start working without uninstalling it. Remember, I use the stories from the second video, I believe. Yeah, and we'll also create a command that will modify that value in the settings file for us, so that our users will be able to go to preferences, package settings, Sublime Spotify REST, and there will be a command here, enable, disable, and they will also be able to type in Spotify, and there will be not only settings but also enable, disable. All right, so let's get started. So our first test is going to be called test refresh interval in seconds defaults. I don't know, should default to 5 if it is not set. It's a very long name, and a few programmers frown upon very long names, but I think it's better if it's readable, right? So you know, it's a test. It's a test, and this is what is that. Refresh interval in seconds should default to 5 if it is not set. So it just so happens that expected value is still 5, right? And the actual value will be settings manager, right? That we have to bring it in. So we will say from sublime Spotify REST dot settings manager, which is the name of the file, import settings manager, which is the name of the class that we don't even have yet, right? So let's create it maybe. So it's a class called settings manager. Okay. Right. So we have the settings manager, and as its argument, it will receive a reader writer, right? So remember our settings manager for Sublime, which has methods read setting and write setting. So this kind of thing will be passed into the settings manager, right? So the settings manager will have a constructor, right? That will take self, and it will also get the reader writer. Okay, and all it will do it will just save them as read and write. So it will just extract those methods basically. So reader writer dot read setting, which is this one, and the same for write setting. Okay, but in our tests over here, we basically act as if this one doesn't exist yet, right? So we're not going to test the production one, the one that actually needs a file and reads keys and values from a file. We're going to have a fake one, right? All right, so since Python has duck typing, all we need to do is we need to create a wrapper, or basically an implementation that feels like our reader writer, our Sublime settings manager. Okay, so we're just going to call it a wrapper, right? Or actually, you know what? Let's call it fake reader writer. Okay, and it's just going to have a constructor. It's just going to be similar to this one, but it's going to get the functions themselves. It's going to get read and write, and most of the tests will test the read function. So let's set write to none. If you're coming from Java or C# or one of the statically typed languages, usually they have null, and this is what Python has for null. Okay, so all it's going to do is it's going to save them as, again, read and write. Okay, and it's going to have those functions that that a settings manager has, because remember, this is what we're doing. We're faking the settings manager. So it will have the read setting and it will have the write setting. Okay, and all the read setting is going to do is going to return self _ read the key, right? And write is going to do the similar thing. It's going to write key value. So what it allows us to do is it allows us to pass this fake writer into here, right? So over here, we're going to say fake writer. So we're going to create an instance of it, and we're going to say that read, this function, is a lambda. Okay, it's a lambda that gets a key in and returns, in this case, a none. Now we don't need to specify write, because in this case all we're testing is the actual value. Okay, so basically whatever function we're going to call on our settings manager, it will call the read function, right? Actually, let's do that now. So let's call the function called this, refresh interval in seconds. Because remember, this is what we're doing. We're saying that test that refresh interval in seconds should default to 5 if it is not set. So we're creating a settings manager. We're calling refresh interval in seconds, and what it will do is it will have this function, obviously, right? And it will say self.read, and it will give it the key, right? And the key is going to be, in our case, so this is the actual key, the one that will be in the settings file in the future, right? So we're going to call it sublime Spotify rest. So we're also going to mention that it's an integer, which is completely optional. I'm just trying to provide as much information to the user as possible, and it will be called refresh interval in seconds. And as I already mentioned many times, I usually forget the return key because I'm doing Scala most of the time these days, and in Scala the last expression in a function gets returned. Okay, so this is all that it's going to do. So we're creating the settings manager. We pass in this fake writer, which is fake reader writer actually, and we're calling refresh interval in seconds. And refresh interval in seconds, it will call read, which I type wrong again. It will call this one read, and read is this one, which basically says whatever key you give me, it will not even evaluate that. It says whatever you give me, I'm gonna give you none. So basically the actual value is going to be none, and we expect 5. So this test should fail. This is how you usually write tests. You want them to fail in the beginning, okay? So let's see. Invalid syntax. All right, this is one of those things that I really hate in Python. There are like millions and one ways to import things, and in this case, I believe it doesn't like the hyphens, so it can't find the settings manager. So luckily, there are like so many ways to bring in things in Python. There are so many ways to stitch scripts together. So what we're going to do is, instead of having that, we're just going to do this, and we're going to pretend like we're in the same folder. So we're going to import OS, and we're going to import sys, and we're going to say sys.path append. So basically the idea is that we append the entire folder, this one, into the path, and then when Python will be looking for that, it will find it, because this folder all of a sudden will be on the path. So the way we do this, we want the absolute path like that, okay? And there is a function that will join strings for us and make sure that the slashes are in place, in correct places. So you're going to say OS path, and there's a way to figure out the place where we are right now, which is like that. And the second parameter is going to be that. Okay, so basically we are in tests, but we want this one also to be in scope. So that's what we have, and then we can say from settings manager import settings manager. And if I did everything right, it should work. Okay, let's see. All right, so now it fails for an actual reason. It says a fake reader writer object has no attribute read setting. Let's see. Fake reader writer. Read setting. It's right there. What's the problem? Settings manager line 3. Settings manager line 3. Read setting. That should be fine. Oh, it's not saved. Why is it not saved? That's weird. Let's save it. Okay, still the same error. All right, this is the problem. You see the indentation? When I copy pasted it, the indentation is wrong. This is one of those things that most people in Python actually love, but nothing is perfect. So, all right, next one. Settings manager object has no attribute read. I'm never sure if I restarted Sublime or not, so let's try that again. All right, see, we're getting further. Okay, yeah, so now actually we have exactly what we wanted. It says none is not equal to 5. So now we can actually implement what the test wants us to implement, right? So our test wants us that if the refresh interval in seconds is not set, it should default to 5. So now it's not set, and we need to write some code that would return a 5 here. Okay, so let's try something simple. So this is the actual value. Okay, and I'm going to say if actual is none, return 5, else return actual, and maybe this will be enough. Oh, because I closed my console, I didn't see that. Okay, all right, I'm in Python. Okay, so there we go. Same thing over here. All right, so that either didn't help or we need to restart Sublime. Right, so I was hoping that we would not need to restart Sublime if we had it over here, but it feels like we have to, which kind of sucks. And I wonder why. Actually, lately I've been having problems with this. I guess was this testing library was bringing things in, but if we have to restart Sublime all the time anyway, then we might as well put the settings manager in the correct place, right? So let's open containing folder, and let's just cut it out and put it into Spotify. Okay, so it's over here, and what we need to do, close that one, open it again, and in our tasks we need to bring in source Spotify and restart Sublime again, and task current project. Okay, we're still good. Okay, so we're not going to write that many tests today. We're going to write a few more so that you kind of see, you get this feeling of how, sort of test-driven development kind of thing works. But we will switch really fast to me just copy-pasting tests, and we're just going to fill in the implementation instead. Okay, so let's try one more. What's that? Sublime Spotify REST. This is our main file. We don't need that. All right, so this is a test file, and this is the actual implementation. Okay, so let's write a test that is very similar. In fact, it is so similar that we will be able to copy-paste the whole thing. Just copy-paste it, okay? And let me close that so we have a bit more space, like this, okay? And maybe make it smaller. All right, so we're here, and this one is going to say test refresh interval in seconds should default to 5 if it is not end. Okay, so if we return not end over here, then it still should be 5. Okay, let's see. Not end, not equal 5. Which is expected. So over here, we can say not instance of actual end, or actual is none, return 5. Let's see. Okay, it still didn't do anything, so we need to restart Sublime. Okay, global name instance of is not defined. What did I type wrong? Oh, it's called is instance of. Okay. See, and it still says the same thing, which means that we need to restart Sublime. It actually kind of sucks. Like I wrote this plugin a while back before even I started recording this series, and I don't remember having these problems. I don't understand why we need to restart Sublime all the time now. So from now on, I'm going to try to cut it out from the video so that everything is a bit faster. So let's say test current project again. What is your problem? Oh, it's called is instance. There we go. Now we even have highlighting. Jesus. Okay, you know what they say, 24th time is a charm. There we go. Finally done. Okay, so we're going to refactor that a little bit. So we're going to have a function called, okay, so we're going to have a helper called a test default refresh interval in seconds. Okay, it's going to have a self and a function called load settings. Okay, so it will do a very similar thing. So it will have the loader first, which is the settings manager, fake reader writer, and read equals load settings. Okay. And the actual value is going to be loader dot that. Okay. And expected is always 5, so it just goes straight to assert equals actual and 5. There we go. Because we're testing, this is the helper for the default one. Okay. So what we can do now is, first of all, let's just run it again to see if we have maybe syntax errors. It's all good except for rendering artifacts. Okay, there we go. Okay, so instead of doing all of that, all we need to do is we need to keep this lambda. Okay. And instead of all of this, we will be able to say test that whole thing, and we give it that. Okay. So if we run that, it should be fine. And now we can remove that. Errors 1, what happened now? Oh, I need to say self dot. Sorry. All right, there we go. Self dot. And the same thing here, but in this case, the lambda returns none. So because we have this helper function, the cost of the test is reduced so much that it's so easy to write more and more tests. Actually, what we're going to do now is I'm going to copy paste a few tests, and then we're just going to implement all of them at once. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. All right, so let's have this one. Let's put it right here actually. And this one is going to say refresh interval in seconds should default to 5 if load settings raises an exception. And lambda syntax for Python is a bit limited, so we can't throw an exception in a lambda. Therefore, we need to implement this tiny method that I called so funnily throw up. Okay. And it's a tiny, super tiny helper, which just all it's doing, throw up, right? So all it's doing is it raises an exception. It's just that if we had this over here, like that, this would not be a valid Python. See, it doesn't like it here. Okay. So let's see what happens. Okay, it fails, obviously. It says global, oh, sorry, in my previous one I called it reader writer wrapper. There we go. All right, failed. Object is not callable. What? All right, look at our other test. We don't even need that. So I forgot that our helper function is doing that for us anyway. So there we go. So we're just passing the lambdas. Okay, which is way better than, you know, creating files with like fake values and stuff. Okay, so now we actually have it raise an exception. We're just going to add a few more tests before we implement them all at once. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to have this one. Test refresh interval in seconds should default to 5 if input is less than 1. Then we're also going to have a similar one for the upper bound, greater than 15. And let's see. Yeah, and that's actually it. So only these two. So this one looks like this. There's a minimum equals 1, and we're just going to do that. Okay, and so the key is going to be smaller than 1. I'm sorry, that's not the key. That's what this lambda is going to return as a value when we pass in the key. Okay, and also let's do something fancy. Let's go into also say random randint, And we're going to start with something really small, and until that, okay? And I believe for that we need to import random. Let's do it over here. I like to sort the imports like this, that it's you know, the language specific stuff, and then the framework specific stuff, and then there would be third party and also our own, like this. Okay. Yeah, let's do a similar one over here, where we're going to have a maximum, and our maximum is going to be 15, and one higher than maximum would be +1. Okay, and obviously we need to switch that so it's a plus now, and it's an upper bound. Whoops. All right, so all of that should sort of work, but it should fail for the right reasons, right? It's going to say 0 is not equal to 5 and 16 is not equal to 5, okay? Because it generated a random number over here between 16, right? So that one failed. Okay, so the implementation is very straightforward, which is basically going to say or actual smaller than 1 or actual is bigger than 15. All right, we forgot the exception one. Okay, so for the exception, we're just going to wrap the whole thing in a try column, right? And we do that. And in case there's an exception, we simply return 5 again. Let's restart, and assuming that I have all the indentation correctly, it should raise an exception again. What? Why? Oh, how silly. Okay, this one needs to be over here. All right, so now it's all good. So this is a bit ugly. So let's refactor a little bit. Let's just put everything that is in here. So everything that is in the try. Let's just put it into a different function. Okay, let's just cut it out, and the function is going to be called. So it's going to return self_refresh interval in seconds, and it will get in the default value, right? Because we have some repetition here, so let's just have a variable called default, and the default is 5. Okay, and now we're going to define it, all right, like that, self and default, and it's going to do exactly what it did before, right? And this is our default for without repetition, right? Okay, so it's doing the same thing as before we introduced the whole try catch thing, and now it's a bit cleaner. Okay, so we got to return here, we got to return here, colons, everything looks fine. Colon here, yeah, it all should be fine. I'm gonna restart Sublime. Thank God at least that it restarts so fast, so it's kind of annoying for me, but yeah, okay, so it's all good. And this is one of the cool things, that if we have tests, we can actually play around with our code. Like maybe maybe we know a little bit more Python in the future, or maybe we just realize that some pieces of code are not necessary, right? So we can just start removing stuff, and if it just happens to still work, it's good, right? So let's see. I believe that this is unnecessary because something else is going to catch it, right? So let's let me duplicate this whole line and comment it out so that we can compare with what we had before. Let's just remove this whole thing and restart Sublime and test current project. Oh, look, it's all still fine. Okay, and then I believe that Python does not need those parentheses. Right? Let's do that. Okay, let's kill Sublime. Start it again. Our console opens automatically, and we test current project, and boom, it still works. And I also believe, I don't remember the last time I played with it, but I believe Python has something cool like the actual value should be between 1 and 15. No, hold on, we need to do 16, right? So something like that. No, 1 is also possible, so something like that. Okay. Yeah, all right, let's see. All right, that one failed because I did something wrong. Okay, but it's not syntax. It's just that all of a sudden 16 was all right. What are we doing wrong? Oh, right, obviously. So this is not what should happen in the default case. Okay, so what we want to have here is, okay, so actually let me think of the fast way to do that. So let's say not that. Okay, maybe that will work. Yeah, that actually works. You know what? What about this none thing? So this thing will probably return false if it's not, right? So let's remove that. Let's remove that. Okay, let's just have this. It works. And actually this is kind of ugly because we have a not. So I don't want to have a not, so I'm just going to remove the not and switch the cases, right? And now I don't need to do that. Okay. There we go, it still works. And you know what? Let's have it like that. It's a bit, it's a few more characters, right? But at least visually we see exactly which values are valid, right? So we'll look at it and we see, okay, 1, 15, everything in between is good, right? So you can clearly see, even though it's a super simple code, you just look at it, you see, okay, 1, 15, cool, okay? Restart for the last time. Boom, it works. Compare this with that. And this is the thing, this thing with the tests. A lot of people sort of see only the costs of the test, but they don't see much value. And basically, if we didn't have tests, basically no programmer in their right mind, no software developer, would just go to a random function in your code base and start improving it, right? Because they would be afraid to break it. But if we have tests, look, our code gets better. Instead of getting worse, it gets better. All right, so I will try to avoid writing tests for the remainder of this series, but there will be tests. So once the series is done, check out the GitHub repository and look at all the tests that we have. Okay, because tests are valuable and you can always learn from them. Okay, so we have the simple settings manager, right? That is initialized with some reader writer. Actually, you know what? So let's close the test for now. Let's do like that. So this is our settings manager, okay? And let's open our main file so that we kind of see how the whole thing fits together. This is our main file where we had, maybe it's better like this. well, we had this Sublime settings manager, right? And now we're going to have the Spotify settings manager, right? So now we're going to create, the Spotify settings manager, which is just going to be called settings manager. Okay, settings manager equals settings manager, this one. And by the way, see, because we don't need to include the Sublime Spotify resting, which has hyphens, we can actually use that syntax to import stuff. Okay, so it will actually work. So settings manager, and its reader writer is going to be the Sublime settings manager, right? And just for fun, let's say on plugin loaded, let's just say settings manager refresh interval in seconds. Let's just see what happens. Okay, let's just restart Sublime. Oh, actually, we didn't need to restart Sublime. Okay, what does it say? Doesn't have an attribute refresh interval in seconds. Really? How did I call it then? Refresh interval in seconds. What's wrong? Settings manager. Refresh interval. Is there a typo? No, there's not. What's happening? Also, by the way, just calling it is not going to do us any good. So let's print it out. But still, it should exist. It's weird. Maybe it's doing that before. No, it doesn't. Let's just restart and hope that maybe it works this time. Yeah, something weird was going on, like probably Sublime loaded it too early or something. But as we can see here, the value is 5, and it's 5 because nothing is specified. But if we actually do this settings, because it already works, I forgot that we already implemented it. So if you put in the key, which was, I think, Sublime Spotify rest, what was it? Underscore int underscore refresh interval in seconds, and the value is going to be, I don't know, 13. Why not? And if I save, it reloaded and it's 13, which is kind of cool, right? Let's leave it in, whatever. Okay, so that was sort of for fun. Let's remove it for now. We're going to leave that one here because we will need it in the future. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to, without tests, just implement another function on the settings manager, which will be very similar, but it will work with booleans. So it will be called is enabled, and it will look very, very similar. Okay. So it will be called is enabled. Okay, self, and the default is going to be false, because in the beginning, when our plugin is going to be started, it's not going to work at all. I will explain later why, because we will need something from Spotify, from the user, from his personal account. So let's just do that. Return. It's a very similar pattern, and the tests for that also look very, very similar. Is enabled, default, accept. It's the same thing, right? Same thing as in here. There is some sort of default. We guard against exceptions. We have this helper function like this. In fact, we can just duplicate it over here. Do that. Okay. And the implementation over here is also very, very similar. So first we're going to have the actual value, which is going to read it out over here, but the key will be called, it's not an int, it's a boolean, and it's called is enabled. And we're just, because there's no range or anything, all we're going to do is we're going to say if not is instance actual boolean return default, else return the actual value, and that's it. Okay, so now we know if our plugin is enabled or if it is disabled. Also, let's do another one. Let's have a function called toggle, because we're almost done. I believe we have enough time to squeeze it in. So remember that we're still in the Sublime, not in the Sublime, in the Spotify settings manager, which has read it, but it also has write. Okay, so toggle will do that. Self write. Okay, and now it will set this value. For this key, it will basically say not whatever it is right now. Okay, and it's a function call. So it will switch it. So if it was true, it will set it to false, and if it was false, it will set it to true. So what we're going to do now, assuming that this whole thing works, by the way, let's open the console, and actually let's just restart Sublime, and maybe it will do some. Okay, maybe it didn't even load the file. So what we're going to do here is we're going to implement yet another command. So we're just going to basically we're just going to duplicate this whole thing, right? Actually, let's modify that one. Let's leave that one down here. So this one will be called Spotify toggle. Okay, and it will not use the Sublime settings manager. It will use the regular settings manager, and it will call the toggle function. Okay, and now we go to main. Remember that one here. We're just going to copy paste that. Okay, so it will be called enable disable. Okay, and it will be calling toggle, right? Because remember the rewrite rules, it will just say, it will lowercase the s and will remove the command. So our command is going to be called sublime Spotify toggle, which is what we're calling over here. And now we're just going to copy that and put it also into commands, right? That one. So it's going to put it in, and we're going to type in Spotify colon here. Okay, so assuming all of that worked, now we should be able to say Spotify settings, and actually let's bring that one over here. Okay, so this is our settings file. Okay, our user settings file. See, it's under packages, user Sublime Spotify REST. Okay, so if I press Command-Shift-P now, type in Spotify, then all of a sudden there's this one, and as soon as I click that, it should do object has no attribute right. I forgot an underscore over here. Okay, so as soon as I press that, it should create new. It should say, okay, the default value is false, right? So there is no setting over here, so the default value is false. So it will toggle it to true, and it will write in this whole line over here. This one. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. What's happening? Missing one required position. Okay, so I should not record these videos in the evening. Okay. There's a default here. There's a default here. It seems fine. What's happening? Line 39. 39 is over here. So, oh, I'm calling the wrong one. I should be calling that one. All right. Yeah, see, it worked. So it just added it, and it's true now. And if we click it again, hold on, let me move it down here so that we see what's happening. Okay, let's just close all of that. Close that, close that, close the console. All right, so the file is over there. I say Command Shift P, enable disable. Why is it still true? What's happening? All right, so I cut the video and I found the error. And the problem was that it's not called Boolean in Python, it's called bool. And so this expression always returned true, so it always returned default. So even though it is true, when it was trying to flip it, it would return false here, over here, and it would switch it back to true. So it only worked when you would switch it from default to true, but not from true to false. Okay, yeah. So again, tests. So let's do that. I might need to restart Sublime again. Yep. Okay, there we go. So enable disable, now it's false. Enable disable, now it's true. And the same thing also works for that guy. Enable disable, false. Where was it? And true. All right, so the very last thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the command over here. And when we're also going to say if, actually I don't believe we need that in Python, right? This is what the colon is for. Settings manager is enabled. Okay, then we're going to Sublime settings manager this time. We're jumping back and forth, okay? And we're going to say toggle message. Actually, no, let's just say display message, and the message will be Spotify enabled. Play a song and it will be shown here. And if it's not enabled, right, so over here, else, then we're just going to say Spotify disabled, and that's it. Okay, so all we need to do now is we need to go to the Sublime settings manager, this one. Let's put him over here. Let's close that. Close that. Okay, and we need to implement that function. So we got open settings window here. Let's have it somewhere here. All right, and all it's doing is it's going to Sublime, which is already imported. Yep. Sublime dot active window status message. Message. that is all. So if I did it right, let's restart it. And so if I did it right, if I do that, it should say, does it say it? It doesn't say it. What happened? Oh, that file is not saved. Man. All right. So look at this. Spotify why does it say disables? Disabled. There we go. Spotify disabled. Okay. Spotify enabled. Play a song and it will be shown here. Actually, let's close the console. There we go. And from here it should be the same thing, right? Because it's the same code. Boom, Spotify disabled. Spotify enabled, play a song, and it will be shown here. All right, so that's it for this time. Actually, no, let's commit all of that. Okay, so we're in here, and yeah, a bunch of stuff changed. Add everything. Commit. I'm gonna say video 4 added tests and implemented Spotify /settings manager. Okay, and push that, and it's pushed. So if we go here now to our repository, we should see 5 commits. Click on that. This is the 5th commit, video 4. And that's what we did. So we added the command here. We did some stuff over here, what is this? This is the main file. So we imported it, this new Spotify settings manager, we created it, and we passed in the Sublime settings manager, and we implemented the command that does the toggle and also displays the message. That's the command for the main menu, it should be. Oh no, this is for the command palette, and this one is for the main menu. And what else? Yeah, so obviously the Spotify settings manager was very beautiful, very Pythonic code here. Oh, actually, I'm not even sure if we need braces here, if we need parentheses here. Let's check that. It's always good to check what we committed. Let's see. Boom, it's still fine, right? That's actually kind of cool. This is one of the reasons people really like Python, because it's so readable. No need for any extra keys, extra characters, I mean. All right, so that's it for this video, which turned a bit longer than I wanted it to be. Let me know if you like it. Let me know what I can do better the next time. And the next time, I believe we will implement a server that will intercept a Spotify redirect response, which I will explain in the next video. All right, see you next time.